All right, I think we're all good with the recording. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining. This is pretty exciting to kick off this first episode of the Tech Voices Spotlight series. This is organized by DCLK. DCLK is Diversity Collective Sri Lanka. And our aim is to create a more diverse environment in the tech ecosystem in Sri Lanka. And we do this across four main pillars: the school pillar, the higher education pillar, career corporates, and entrepreneurship. So there's some great work across all those pillars. And if that interests you, please reach out. We're always looking for more people to join us. And the Tech Voices Spotlight series that we're kicking off today with Dr. Gamage is an area, a platform really to showcase all the great work done by women in the tech industry. So to get to know some women here and also to create more role models in this space for perhaps young women who are starting out and other career women who are looking for others to look up to. And a quick set of house rules, not too many. Just remember to keep yourselves on mute. You're welcome to turn on your video. It's lovely to see you if you feel bold enough to turn on your camera. But otherwise, please keep yourself on mute until we get to the Q&A session. We'll have 15 minutes at the end where you can unmute and ask a question, or else you can use the chat feature here throughout the session to put your questions through. So you don't have to wait till the end. If you have a question, please type it up in the chat and we'll try to get through as many questions as we can at the end, the last 15 minutes of the session. And let me start off, kick off the session by introducing Dr. Gamage, who has kindly volunteered to be our first speaker of the series. So really excited to have her here. And a quick intro. So she has a lot of accolades and I'll go through a few. She's the former vice president of the IEEE Women in Engineering. She's also been in the tech space for nearly 20 years. She also has her own consulting business in tech as well. She's done a PhD, which focuses on human-computer interaction and learning at scale. More recently, she's been doing some postdoctoral work around deep fakes. And she's also very passionate about empowering and promoting women within the higher education space. And she has been working with DCLK on that front and doing some great work there as well. So to start us off, perhaps you can tell us about your first foray into IT. What got you started? What got you interested in IT and studying it? Over to you, Dilrukshi.
Thanks, Rennie. Okay, so this goes back to my school age, actually. How did I start it? Well, I remember I don't think I had the specific interest of computers, but once I remember doing my A-levels that 20, 30 years ago, 1999, or before, just two years before that. Our school was introduced a new computer lab, and I remember my teachers were, our teachers were very, they were secure in the computers and said, you can't touch the computers, it will break. So, that statement hit my mind anyway. Although I did bioscience for my A-levels, I was, that statement hit in my mind forever, how can computers break if we touch? So that how the human computer interaction, somehow, even though I didn't know the term of that, field, but I had, there was a seed in my mind. So although I was, selected to do bioscience, but I chose to do IT instead. So I, parallelly did bioscience, but in the middle, I stopped it and enrolled to the IT university so I could finish my, IT and continue from there. So that's where that I grew all my interest from there. I think it's 2001 that I enrolled to SLIIT as the second batch, I guess. Yes, that was the second batch. 2000 was the first batch. Yeah, so since then, ever since then, I'm still here. So it's really interesting to see the technologies are growing and to get hands-on experience of these things are really fascinating. That's what makes me keeps alive every day.
That's an interesting comment that the teacher said, oh, don't touch the computers, and I break. But I'm glad, that ignited a passion in you. Thought, oh, I've got to check this out and get into it. That's interesting. And also tell us about your journey into the tech industry. I know you started a consultancy company, tech consulting, and also you wanted to bring research and actually implement it in industry, and that was one of your focuses, right? So tell us a little bit more about that.
Right. Okay. So soon after my undergraduates, I joined a solutions, technology solutions company where, I was, I don't know, somehow I had the skill to explain or like skills to demonstrate the solutions much more better than any other else, sort of like the business analysis, like, how do you, show the impact of what systems that you use. So I think more than the coding, I was more into that side of it. So that's where I started my career as a management trainee and, product designing, it's all from the business aspect. That was in 2005, 4 and 5. Then I had to move out from the country where, I had to leave Japan. So because of my husband, so I was living there for nearly about 6 years. But I had the passion to further study, not to gain any certificates, but I wanted to kind of explore new dimensions. What are the new technologies? And Japan was one of the a land that I could enjoy the technologies. And it was the moment that those are the years of my life, I would say, experience in the high tech and also kind of researching on them in depth, while my husband also was doing his, soon after his PhD, he was working for a company where they design 5G LTE models. And I remember he was bringing the base station at home and, coding it from the scratch. So that was the time that, we didn't have LTE in Sri Lanka, but the Japanese companies were designing 5G technologies, LTE. So they were designed. So that's the real research that I saw in my bare eyes, like how these research come into the implementation. And also like seeing the technologies like, Japan is the most fascinating country where they explore different kind of human interaction. So that's again, my human, interest to the cognitive or like, the applied research and the human computer interactions grew much more higher. The technologies that I see mostly are more to do with the humans, and they had the vision for 20-30 years ahead. That's kind of fascinated me, and I think my seed was growing really much more higher when I was living there, and then came back. Then we started our company, a consultancy company, where most of the what we did in our consultancy company is like providing solutions or like high end skills solutions where other integrators wouldn't be able to do. So it's mostly the skill based, like what we design or like the solutions that we provide is more effective than rest of the solution companies. I would say it's a niche market that we been started. So since 2013, we are still living in that income. And yeah, I think we are not vast, but the operations that we do is very unique. So it's very skill based. So I think that's the reason that my passion for research plus passion to build some things which can be used by day-to-day humans is came into the action, I would say. So my area of interest more towards human cognition, or like UX or product design, solution design. So yeah, so that's how until I started my PhD was established from 2013 to until now. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, that's such a great opportunity to kind of be on the bleeding edge of technology. And sometimes you may not always have the option in different countries. And it's nice to kind of see things before they materialize here in Sri Lanka. And that gap, I think, is reducing with time. Now, technology is moving so fast. And soon the bleeding edge technology goes out much faster than it used to, maybe, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so going back to the interest in human computer design interaction. So it was a seed in your head, and so you went to Japan and it kind of ignited that flame again. And was that when you started on your PhD and the research around learning at scale and human computer interaction?
Yeah, so when I was in Japan, I looked at ways that I can enroll into a formal studies, and because of the unstable situation that I had, I was actually expecting my first child in Japan. So Japanese universities expect everybody to come to the campus, so I wasn't much ready. So that time I used more to explore, because when you do a PhD, it's not that easy. Like, overnight you will say, oh, I will do the PhD on this area. So it doesn't come like that. So you should have the in-depth love for it, I would say, because that's going to be your baby for next 5-6 years. So if you pick the wrong areas, you'll be definitely suffering. So I didn't want that to happen. So I kept on reading, observing, and to observing in the sense I looked at what are the possible, or like what are the emerging areas that will have a gap that I can solve. So because of my hidden interest to the human computer interaction, I didn't have that, as I told you, I didn't have that term in my mind. I never knew that, but I knew something called pervasive computing. Pervasive computing is like, when you are designing technologies for people to use. Japan is highly advanced in that technologies, how people can use daily electronic items or any software items for daily use. So with the LTE development, there was many other applications coming to their market. So I think I looked at most of the research and then where they're heading, and then I realized, okay, that was I think 2000 somewhere around 2010 to 2013. I kept on external research rather than enrolling into a PhD program. So just tiny assignments that I undertake from other research advisors, or we call them PI, principal investigators. So I did small assignments with them, taking some component of research to see whether anything that fits for me. So then there was a time Japan was hitting the recession. So soon before that, we came back to Sri Lanka, and then I had few opportunities to do a formal PhD in Japan, of course, and US with the full scholarships. But uh, uh, I would say it's in a way, sacrifice to the family that I wanted to be with them, because I had newborn, actually two girls at that moment. That was 2000. Yeah, my second child was born in 2013. But I really wanted to study and have a good balance of life as well. So I took the decision to do the PhD in Sri Lanka. So I enrolled University of Moratuwa, which was close to my home, and I could my advisor was Dr. Shanta Fernando, and I think the reason that I selected him is because I have done research with him throughout my master's, and he happened to be really supportive in supervisor for me. So it was easy a decision for me to select that in a supervisor. And then I said, this is the area that I want to study. Then the department or my advisor gave another advisor saying that, if you are interested in HCI, there was a young PhD returnee from St. Andrews University, Dr. Indigo Pereira. So he became my co-supervisor on the HCI, human computer interaction. But in between that, fascinating thing happened because while I was pregnant at home, I took some of the courses online, and I happened to, that was 2012 to 2014, I happened to find Coursera human computer interaction course from Stanford, and that was my turning point. I immediately took the course and finished it off, and then, the fascinating thing is that it was free at that time, and was the first time the course was offered for the public. And I met a lot of network through that course and gave me lots of opportunities. And that gave me a chance to get involved in a worldwide research project led by Stanford University, professor called Michael Bernstein. So I worked in that project for about 3+ years. And I think there, while staying in Sri Lanka, I was given access to most of the cutting edge research in human computer interaction. So I think that has been the turning point, or the moment for me to master that field. So ever since then, 2014, 15, I think I grew my research interest and did many research projects with worldwide research groups.
It sounds like it was quite a journey to get there. You did a lot of analysis and testing out what you actually wanted to do your research in before you got into it. And you also I've heard a few people say about PhD, it's like having a baby. And when you said you were actually having a baby as well, so it's like you had 3 babies.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you must be pretty good at balancing all of those things. That's a lot of things on your plate.
Yeah, so I enjoyed everything. Whoever have seen me in physical times, or they would have seen, how I take my kids to every other programs, or even sometimes even my presentations, my daughters come accompany with me. So, the secret is that when I do research, it's not like, I'm in a place hidden somewhere and I don't do that. It's a thing that I do with the family, and I think in a way it's good because my husband also has his PhD, and we have sort of common things to discuss, and research words are mostly at home, even with the kids.
So it's just very much part of your life, and the kids are very much on board. That's fantastic. And so going back to your Coursera course, was that where your interest in books and learning online, that part came in? Was it? If you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so that was another turning point as well. So I knew that I wanted to do human computer interaction, but human computer interaction as a subject is a huge area as well. There's lots of areas that you can see, either computer, CSCW, that is computer supported collaborative work, or accessibility, you name it. It's a matter of like, how do you help people to work with the technology. So in my way, I think the year that Coursera was brought, that was 2012. 2012, edX, Coursera, and Udacity, or Udacity they call it. So those three companies were incepted first, for the first time. 2011, Stanford machine learning course was there, but still, it wasn't that high. But 2012 is the turning point. So since then, I took, because of the interest that I got from the HCI course, the 2012, I kept on taking more and more MOOC courses. I could do that easily because I was at home, and I wasn't interested in because the kind of work that we do is mostly flexible, and I didn't have to go 8 to 5. So the time is well spent on studying and learning how others are learning. So I kept on taking courses from different platforms, and I felt like something is missing out there. Like, some of the courses are fantastic, and there's high engagement patterns, but some other courses weren't there. So the typical question is whether is that because of the technology, or is that because of the pedagogy? Pedagogy is the way that you teach. What cause some courses to do much more effectively, and what cause some courses not to do much effectively. So that was, that was the fundamental question that I had in my mind. Why do some people do better in their courses and some don't? So, that itself became one of my major research questions when I formally did my PhD. And I'm fortunate, I could work with some of the leading MOOC platforms, such as Open SAP, where the SAP world industry, where they had a platform called OpenSAP, where they produce more of the SAP courses. So I could do lots of research in that platform, as well as access to data on other research platforms as well. So looking at the data analytics, like how students are performing in one course versus the others, and how different is the technology or the class setting is correlated to these, the activities, were kind of reflecting what's happening inside the courses. But that itself didn't give the correct answer, or the optimal answer. So that's how I use my human computer interaction, knowledge, or like the research, action research, where we kind of lots of do interventions and see whether, does this model work than the other model, kind of like doing A/B testing, or mostly ethnographic researches as well. Ethnography in the sense, like, how do you monitor people using systems and, observe their behaviors and come to kind of understanding what works better than the other. So that's the main research that I continued in my PhD.
I find it quite interesting that you did research on other cohorts and samples, but you also did these courses yourself. So you have quite a deep understanding of these different platforms and different techniques they use. So putting all of this together, what were the key takeaways? So what makes online learning better or more fruitful, and what doesn't? What were your key findings?
Yeah, so as a major outcome of my PhD thesis, what I came is like a 10-dimensional framework. When I say framework, those are the areas that when you're designing a course, you should be taking care of. So there was 10 items that you should look at, for example, like technology, assessment, and, let me, mm, I was trying to share one of the research papers, but it will take time anyway. So there I rank some of the 10 dimensions to say that, if you do these, if you pay attention to these items when you're designing a course, that will work much better. So that's the framework, but not only that, as a development to that, I brought a theory of social aspects to the learning, where I said, when you have a large scale learning, it's important to have community values. So how do you kind of empower community dimensions in a technology? Now, when you take a large scale online learning, everybody is decentralized in the sense like, everybody will be looking at a platform at an instant where they think they are the only people. They will watch a video and then, sort of answer a question, or like, do a forum. Very hardly now people take the forum as to write, or like, engage with others. So MOOCs in the sense massive open online courses had this fall point, or the drawback is like there wasn't any engagement point. Only interaction point that they can see is the forum. So forums aren't optimized there. So the business model of the online courses were designed thinking that individuals will learn better, or like, this is called self-regulated learning, SLR. So automatically these platforms assign, or like platforms assume that learners are very much capable of learning together by themselves, like, individualized learning. So they use much more machine learning model to say, that this is how you answer your questions, or, a bot will answer the questions and say, whatnot. So in that aspect, so what is missing is the when you go to an industry or 21st century, you would not be seeing problems by yourself. It will be a collaborative effort, and you would not be solving one problem by yourself. It will be you will be solving problems together with everybody. So there's compromising, there's communication, there's collaboration, there should be a critical thinking, creativity. So the platforms do not create or provide opportunities for you to optimize these skills. So it's a drawback of the technology in the sense the tool itself, it doesn't provide that. So how do we redesign these platforms so that people can work together? So the platform is igniting your skills, where you as a person will be growing as a community within a platform. So how do you bring those skills? One of the latest design that I did in my PhD. So I brought a design theorem called community space, where people, where unstructured groups. When I say unstructured groups, is when you enter to a MOOC, you can't, guarantee that you will be assigned to a group. But how do you work with a undefined group within a shorter time and learn from them, and kind of apply your learning skills into a group work? So that's the design that I did, and it worked really well in the experiment phases that I did. And I collaborated with some of the more platforms, and integrated that designs, and it really work really well. I hope that I could really implement further, but I'm still working with now a platform called Future Learn. So they are highly interested in how do we design this, social learning aspects to their courses. So it's an ongoing research or, a project at this moment with a few other collaborative parts.
That's really insightful how you said there's so much more to learning than just, understanding the content and sitting an exam and getting a certificate, but really so much of it is, interacting with people, showing your emotional intelligence and creating synergies. And I think, when they talk about, the time of the Renaissance, it's all these smart people who get together and collaborate and come up with ideas and new thoughts spark from this. So that's really great that there's people are researching this and trying to bring that into the online space as well. And I think particularly during this time, everyone's been doing everything online. And maybe we're missing some of those elements that happen offline, but now we can't do it on offline. So that's really interesting. And I'm glad applications are taking you on board and implementing these things. And hopefully some Sri Lankan businesses can learn from these, the research you've done. And I've also put on the chat how you can get more information on the work that Dilrukshi has done and possibly implement it within your products. There's so much more to say on this topic, but we will have to move along. So I'd like to know a little bit about the PhD journey itself. I know there were some considerations about whether you should do it here in Sri Lanka or somewhere else, and also about, financial support or scholarships and getting the most out of this experience. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey there?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the very important question, I guess, I've been asked every day, even in offline context as well. So how or what things that you should decide, or what things that you should consider when you are doing a degree in Sri Lanka versus abroad. So, in my case, it was a decision that I took, but I would say the pros that I had was that I could stay in one area, or enjoy with my family, and the flexibility that I got was fascinating with my advisors. They were full supporting me on the journey that I was facing. In Sri Lankan context, most of the complaints were the conflicts with the advisors and conflicts with the panels. So but if you can prove that you can do best, or how do you produce the output in an effective way is like publishing and collaborations. So I think I wouldn't say lucky at all, because it was quite an effort that I made to bring international collaborations to my end, so that I could work these areas without accessing to the resources, limited resources which have in Sri Lanka. I knew that I wouldn't get any scholarships from Sri Lanka, because it's, it is always defined that it's hard to find, department funding you to go to conferences and pay your flight tickets, or else, for you to do visiting fellowships. So it's really hard, and it's very competitive within the country itself. So I really wanted to find out, while doing my things, how do I get these missing components, which is the funds to do research. Even a small research will cost you sometimes. You can't just do things free. Your time is money. So one good thing happened to me was that I saw a few of the grants from Sri Lankan government institutions called NRC, National Research Council, and there's another body called National Science Foundation, NSF. So they provide grants for possible principal investigators. And then that grant can help the PhD students to, do the research in local context. So that was the first time that I saw that such a grant. And then I convinced my advisor saying that, my research will be well aligned to the future of Sri Lankan online education. And I was able to, effectively write that grant with my advisor. And then we submitted to the National Research Council, NRC, and we won a 20 million. Yeah, so somewhere around that, that a range of amount as a research grant for about like 3 to 4 years, I guess. I can't remember exactly, but it was a quite fair, or like, it funded me for the basic needs. I wouldn't say that was the best option compared to other countries, but and also the other fact is not that easy to get the grant money as well, even though the money was, fast. It wasn't easy to get the liquid cash from the government institutions.
Yeah. So it sounds like there are avenues, but you really have to persevere and put the time and the effort into seeking out funding to make your research a reality. And I know you also got some international scholarships as well. So I think you got the Grace Hopper Scholarship, the ACM Women's Scholarship, Google Tech Maker Scholarship. And I think perhaps one of those led to you meeting some Nobel laureates as well. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was, I think, 2014. Because of my involvement, I constantly look for other avenues where I can find funds to publish my research. When I had my first research paper ready, I was, I was in a dilemma whether should I be publishing in Sri Lanka or should I be publishing in international conference. So I wanted to give some weightage, because when you publish in the research world, when you publish in a high-end conference where it's indexed in Elsevier or Scopus Web of Science, so that has counted much weightage to your research than just publishing in just a conference here. So that led me to think, like, where can I get funds? And I looked at, because I'm part of the professional associations, IEEE, ACM, what they can give to me, or like, I explored everything, where can they support my research? And I found out there's female computer scientists are very less, and they always encourage mathematics or computer science students who are female to apply for these scholarships. And I found out ACM's women's scholarship at first, and then I made sure that I apply to that to publish in a conference in Japan, in Nara, or Osaka, I guess. So I think in the first attempt itself, I received an amount of nearly about 2,500 US dollars. That was my first international, scholarship. And then I knew, I was given much more training throughout the PhD time, how to, how do you kind of establish your research, and also how to bring a good network, and then find out avenues that where you can, find other ways. So basic scholarships, for example, the Google Tech Makers, they all fund you good amount of US dollars. Also, like, the network is also highly weight, or like, important. On the other hand, there's other small grants as well. Grants in the sense, like, when you meet somebody and when you kind of talk with them, I mean, this is based on the networks that I found. When I say, look, I have this research and I've been doing this, and then they say, looking at your profile, okay, you should be applying to this, this grant, and this European grant is coming, and you should, take part in there. So that's how it has been for me, for example, like, fellowships like ERTEL from the European Advanced Technology Enhancement Learning Fund was one of the, fund happened to me as such a network. So I was offered a scholarship to go to Bari, Italy, and stay like, 10 days there, and everything was funded from the council. So from there, I met so many other researchers who kind of given me paths to other funds, and you should do research there, or like, it's all about collaborations. It's all about the perfect advisor, or perfect supervisor, or perfect network person, which has highly interconnections, which has access to the grants, will kind of, they have lots of projects, and they kind of, when they see that you have done some of the, significant research or significant contributions, and they tend to kind of, support your ideas, or like, invite you to do external research. So that's how I got more involved with the international, more than I did anything with the local community. I think that helped me a lot. People didn't even know that I'm based in Sri Lanka, because everything that I do is happen to do in online situation. So none of them, none of the entities mattered where do I located, than, the work that I do, or like, the output that I produce.
Yeah. I guess being online really eliminates those sort of geographic boundaries, and you can really think past that and push yourself further. That's great that you actually did that, because I'm sure that means that you can put so much more into your research because you have the funding. So that's fantastic. That's great to hear. So moving on to what you're currently doing. So you're currently working on your postdoctoral research on deep fakes. Tell us about that. What's a deep fake? And tell us how do you even spot one? Because there's a lot of fake news out there, and it's a very topical thing. So tell us more.
Okay, so maybe just before that, how do I land to that avenue, or like, that area of research is a fascinating thing as well. Human computer interaction. My PhD is about learning at scale and at CI, and deepfake and misinformation is a whole new area. So when I wanted to do a postdoc, or postdoc in the sense, more research after PhD in within the area of education technology. But while I was a PhD student, I happened to work with some of the other research groups. There was a organization called Credibility Coalition. I happened to work with them in the UX group, which is the user experience group, for about 2-3 years, where the group was led by now she's Professor Amy Zhang from University of Washington, but previously she was an MIT PhD student who led that group. So I continued to work with the group where they were designing technologies for people to understand what is fake and what is right, or it's more to understand the UX point of view, where how we can design interventions to reduce the spread of misinformation. So that has been one of my side projects. Actually, it wasn't my main research, but that led me to a professor from Oxford, where I collaborated with the advisor that I'm working now. He said, like, Dilrukshi, now that you are working, so there's an opportunity in the Tokyo Tech University. They are looking for researchers who has the HCI background, as well as some of the computational social science background. So I think I made, my profile made a perfect fit to that, because the group from the Tokyo Tech that I'm working now is a collaborative project from the Japan Science Foundation, JST, and their vision is to see, their vision is to see how people can seek information or true information in the long run. Now in another 20 or in another 10 years ahead, there will be lots of content generated from people. So the 4.0 web technologies are out there in the web, or out there, what we see is like everything is generated by human. So it's always easy to manipulate human to say that this is the truth, or it can be manipulated algorithmically. So platforms are designed in a way that it's easy to manipulate. So the government bodies are much more interested in how, because it's disturbing the democracy and the long run of social life. So the research group is much more focused on identifying fake media and reducing the fake media. And also the third aspect is to understand the impact of this fake media. So I can share one of the, let me kind of share the screen and show you the work that my group is doing. So this is the funding, like the main research group, which has 3 collaborators, or like the principal investigator is from the National Institute of Informatics, and there is 2 collaborations from Osaka University, and also my advisor from Tokyo Tech. So these all groups have has fundamentally 3 things parallelly but working together. So there's a fake media detection group and fake media, one group is about designing technologies to understand what is, how do people can manipulate with the deep fake. So coming back to your question in the earlier, like what is this fake media or like deep fake? So deep fake things are, you will have synthetic media either.
Sorry to cut in. We do just have 10 minutes. If you can give us a quick kind of rundown on the deepfakes, and then we might move to Q&A. And
right,
folks,
okay.
Please.
Right. So yeah. So deepfake is mostly nothing else than somebody else, or it's computer generated synthetic media. It could be text, it could be media, video, audio, or any content type which is manipulated algorithmically, acting as you. So mostly deepfake term came to the picture as people were using synthetic I'll stop the share. Synthetic videos for pornography. That was 2017, which the term came in from the Reddit group. Somebody's, there was a huge discussion in the Reddit group saying that, how pornography can be, because there was lots of problems to use the real human. So these synthetic videos were taken place where you find any model or any real person, or any person can be reconstructed as to do new things which originally has not been taken before. So that's the thread that we see. Any media can be a deep fake in the future because tools are there. Rooney, if you can share the Excel sheet, that the cheap tools, we have a list of many other deep fake tools which we can day-to-day use, and suddenly it can be a weapon in the future. So in my research, or the group that we do are exploring what how can we identify this, whether if it's a video, whether it's a deep fake video or not. If it's a text, whether this text is generated from a bot or a artificial or manipulated or not. So it's really hard, not that easy. So I think in the long run, people must be very skeptical on what they see in the shared media always, because there's no guarantee that you will see the right or wrong.
Yeah. And we're going into uncharted territories, right? And visually, like I've seen some of these videos, visually, you really can't tell. It could be some president saying something that's really horrible for the country, and a lot of people might believe it. And we might be skeptical in the tech community, but there's so many other people who engage with this news who are not, technology enabled. I constantly think about, say, my older parents who might believe things that they hear or see, because seeing is believing. We've got that phrase, but now it's no longer that. So it really does open up a new space for us to think about how do we regulate this. So very interesting stuff. On that note, I might move to questions. So if anybody has questions, please feel free to unmute and ask. We encourage you to do that. We like this for us to be collaborative, and so feel free to ask. I'll give it a moment for anyone to unmute and ask a question. They also did have some other questions come. Sorry, was someone talking?
Just to break the silence, when you say seeing is believing, there's a recent 2021 CHI is one of the toppest HCI research conference. So there was a paper title like that, seeing is believing, and it's about deepfakes and the deception. I think the research, or much more social science researchers are pointing out that no matter, there's more tools to say that this is fake and this is not. It's all about now people are trying to think, or sometimes it's the early education that matters beforehand than giving a tool saying that this is right or wrong. So it's the pre-education has been effective than tools giving you much more accuracy.
Catching it early and educating people about it. Yeah, that makes sense. So we do have some questions that came in privately. So I think we've answered the question about deepfakes. Do you need a background in maths to do what you're doing?
Oh, really? This is really interesting question. Yeah. So, that's one of the other questions that I get most often, whether, you should have a strong mathematical background to do computer science. It may be depend on the person, but, the journey that I had, I never did mathematics. So, I was never encouraged, and I was always being pushed off to do girls aren't to do maths, even though I slightly liked it, but I hadn't, I had that fear that I wouldn't get to the universities if I do, mathematics. So that made me to think of doing bioscience. But going through the long run, I realized it's, mathematics skills is something that you can develop over the time. It's not overnight, but when you kind of use every day to your subjects, when you are really applying your theories to real practical use, then you will understand the basic concepts behind that. Even now, when I didn't understand most of the mathematical concept, all the matrices when I was studying 20 years back. But now when I started my PhD, that part was much more enlightened to me, because I was listening more, or I was learning much more actively because I wanted to learn. And that is a moment that I felt like, I wouldn't say you would not need maths, but you will need, because some of the regressions or like, most of the algorithms you should be able to understand, so that you know what's happening behind what you are designing. So that is most of the, that is a skill that you can develop over time with the commitment. So do not back off when, thinking that you are not having a good mathematical skills. Apply your concept throughout your career, throughout your research, and then that's the, serendipity moment that you will get, like, aha, this is what I didn't understand in the previous, but it will be more useful when you're applying it daily when you're doing research. So yeah, so I wouldn't be saying that you don't need math. You will need math, but you don't need that Einstein knowledge of mathematics to do that.
And often you'll be working in teams and there'll be other people who might bring that skill set as well. So it's not like you're alone.
Exactly. So that's one of the, I would advise anybody who's doing, computer science or, thinking to join in this field, surround yourself with some of the supportive people. I had, this is another area that I wanted to anyway talk about. I had some of, I because of my exposure to many people, I understood that these people are much more helping hand, and these are like, when you find a small bug in your code, and when you ask somebody, I mean, you should, sometimes you feel not so happy to give your code to somebody and ask like whether what's wrong in that, because it could be tiny typo as well. So most of the time I realized, like, there were challenges for me to say, I found challenges. Some of the trusted collaboration parties were condemning me, like, she couldn't get this one right at the first place, and who does this dumb question, those are the small questions, or like, small negative points that I receive. And it's so, as a female, it's always like frustrating sometimes to be underestimated by many people, saying that, oh, they're not good at that, or like, they take time to do that. But the moment that you will see a silver light of somebody who's really passionately helping you, like, you will understand by the tone and the way that they help. So so it's I would recommend to be selective on the groups that you are associating daily, so that you will be encouraged to study more than some people will depreciate more.
Yep. So it's really important to surround yourself with the right kind of people who cheer you on and good mentors who guide you. We'll take maybe one more question before we close. You did touch on this, but perhaps we'll look at, well, what's the difference in doing a PhD in Sri Lanka versus overseas? Do you have a recommendation?
Right. Okay. So that's really important, because most of the time what happened, or like, when you're doing a PhD in Sri Lanka, it's very rare that you have, not rare, but it's still established in Sri Lankan universities do not much have this research laboratory experience within their universities. So when you take, since I have experience with other, in international research labs, what they do is they have a huge cohort of PhD students, say about like 10, 20, and they are working with the postdoctoral researchers, and also some of the, some of our students, or like, the visiting research fellows. So these all are living in the same lab, and they, when they are doing the researchers, research work, there's a community of practice inside the lab. Like, when you have these fascinating ideas, it's always important to get the feedback. So with the other research, this is what we call peer review. So peer reviews informally happens within the research labs. That is the place that we miss in Sri Lanka. Luckily, I was able to do all the things online with other research groups that I've been working with. And that's how I learned, this is what's missing in the Sri Lankan context compared to the international laboratories that we see in other top tier universities. Yeah, so one of the examples that I can bring is like when I was working with Professor Bernstein at Stanford, the crowd research project. Whenever we do a research, from the idea generation itself to the produce of the conduct of the study, writing of the, doing the analysis, plus writing the research, everything was a group work, and everybody contributed and collaborated, and there was a vast number of idea generations with kind of very diverse peoples, which is the richness of research we should embrace. And then that itself will produce a kind of extraordinary product, because it's not just one knowledge, it's about diverse perspectives to that one element.
So everybody thinks about problems in different ways. So having
Yes.
different kinds of people collaborate means you have a more robust research in the end.
Exactly.
Is there anything else you'd like to say on doing a PhD in Sri Lanka versus overseas?
Yeah, I wouldn't discourage anybody to think twice to do, because if you are now, I see most of the PhD advertisements coming with the funds, which is really good, because when you are doing a PhD, your life will be spent about 5-6 years without an income, would be one of the main barriers that we see in Sri Lankan context. Whereas when you go abroad, like you will be given that's again a job that you do will be funded by government institutions or university itself, or you will be given chance to do lots of teaching. That atmosphere is slightly changing in Sri Lanka, that I see in some of the established government universities, plus semi-government, or when I say semi-government, I would say SLIT also now has most of the government funding access to students to do PhD research. In fact, any other government also would have. So what I would encourage is to think from diverse perspective. I mean, when you do a research in local context, don't limit yourself only to the local research groups. It's important that you kind of reach the international and see where exactly the gap that you are kind of addressing from talking to them.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks for giving us so much insight and so much depth as well to all the questions. We really appreciate you coming on board and being the first of many speakers on our Spotlight series. So thank you very much, Dilrukshi.
Yeah, thank you, Rooney.
And also to our viewers, thanks for joining. You will be able to find this session on YouTube shortly on the DCLK YouTube channel. And it was also live streamed on Facebook as well. And if you'd like to get in touch, if you yourself would like to be in the spotlight on one of these sessions, or you have a woman in your company who you'd like to spotlight, please do reach out to us. I popped the DCLK website on the chat as well, so you can reach out to us through the Contact Us page, or follow us on LinkedIn, drop us a note, and we can line that up for you. All right, well, thank you very much, and we'll wrap up. All right, good night.
Thanks, bye-bye.